Never shall innocent blood be shed, yet the blood of the wicked shall flow like a river. The three shall spread their blackened wings and be the vengeful striking hammer of God. You people have been chosen to reveal our existence to the world. You will witness what happens here today, and you will tell of it later. All eyes to the front. You must watch, dear. It'll all be over soon.
Now you will receive us. We do not ask for your poor or your hungry. We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us.
With every breath, we shall hunt them down.
Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill. Do not rape. Do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into true corruption, into our domain.
For if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. May swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow ever forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be.
In nomine Patri.
Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti.
How far are we gonna take this, Star?
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution? The depth of faith to go as far as is needed?
Good evening, gentlemen. How you doing?
Hey guys.
I'm doing well.
Excellent. Good
My
to hear.
connection's not always that great, so I'm going to go with my avatar tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
So people only can look at me tonight.
You have to look at Steve's ugly mug, huh?
Well, there you go. There's my ugly mug. There's my ugly mug. Gotta love hotel. It's better this week than last week. I don't know what was up last week.
It was maybe a solar flare or something like that, just to ruin your day. So
I'm sure those are much more serious from what I've read than.
So tonight we've said we're going to do this show for a couple weeks now. I've been doing an insane amount of research. It's going to be somewhat Nick-like in that I'm going to be reading from a book, whole passages. Nick.
Nice.
Yeah. Don't really want to have to be talking about this kind of stuff, if I'm perfectly honest. Would much rather be talking about how stupid women are.
But
Yeah, we'll
don't
probably
we
still
already
talk
know
about
that?
it now.
I mean, we do know that.
I don't have any new insights in that area this week.
Yeah, life has kind of pushed everyone towards talking about something else, and that something else was a pretty high profile human deletion. Have to unfortunately keep it clean for YouTube.
We've had a lot of those lately.
Yeah, it's only going to get worse from here.
It seems like a repeat of the summer of 2020.
It's not yet. We will get into that. I have evidence and data for you guys because that's who I am. I can't help myself. In the pre-show, we were noting how we were going to nerd out tonight. But yeah, it does not get better from here. If I had an overarching message or theme, it does not get better from here. There is a point at which it will turn around. Yeah, immediately. Yes. There is a point at which it will turn around.
Future.
Yeah. And in fact,
oh,
go ahead, Nick.
We're some doomers again. Dang it.
Yeah, we have to do the doomer thing. But
it's not purposeful though. It's just truth is not always good.
Yeah, sometimes you have to confront reality as it is, right?
Right.
So
sometimes the prophets gave bad news.
That's actually quite true. Yes. So we were discussing the Charlie Kirk problem, and Steve actually had a fascinating observation that, because you guys know Steve's reputation on the channel, he's our resident conspiracy guy. This observation just blew me away, Steve. And what was that observation?
Oh, well, let me build up to it. Okay. The biggest, even if you don't listen to them, which I don't, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, you know what they've been saying. And you've probably listened to a whole bunch of analysis. I have listened to, Max Blumenthal. He doesn't make any accusations, but okay, there's a lot of whodunit, and here's what's going on here and there. And I said, told Plutarch, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they got the right guy or not. if it happened the way they say it happened, it's kind of a narrative coming out now. It doesn't matter. What matters is, what was the reaction of the left? What is the sentiments of the right? Where is this thing going? That's cool. Pay attention to the beliefs of both parties and how they're engaging and how they're each spinning and accusing, looking for a state player. Doesn't really matter. Even if some state player was in it, had the motivation to sow division in the U.S., that still doesn't matter. The fact is, events are happening, and now we have to deal with them because everybody is reacting emotionally.
Okay, show's over. Mic drop. There we go. That's that. I mean, honestly, guys, if you want one key takeaway from this show, we are not burying the lead tonight. There it is, right there. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter who done it. In fact, I would argue,
right?
You know,
the ultimate factor behind it, it's the effects that matter.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I would argue that people who are trying to make it about who done it are actually trying to distract you from the reaction, from noticing what Steve is trying to point you at. Right? You know, Steve dropped that bomb in our internal chat, and I was just like, it took me a while to respond because I was like, I didn't expect that from Steve. Okay. But then here he's right, because what's actually happening is people are not paying attention to the reactions. They're not paying attention to the things that matter. I mean, they are, but everyone wants to emote over who did it. The reactions, it's a lot less difficult to emote over them because they're so obvious and so different that you kind of just go, that the left is reacting this way and the right is reacting that way, and that's just the way it is. So there's not room for emotion, which is what people want to do right now, which I understand, but that's not what we do.
Well, let's think about it. For the before the details and the narrative, because we don't know it's fact yet, so I'm going to call it a narrative. Before that came out, the news was the reactions of people on the left, and they were highlighting what people were saying online and going over that. And then all of a sudden, we start getting more details. And then they start talking about, oh, what kind of rifle is it? Could he disassemble it? Could he reassemble it? Why were the cartridges still in there? And then, where's the bullet? He had a spine of steel that it didn't exit his body. And then everybody's saying, oh, it's a 30-06. There's no fucking way. Okay, whatever. So then they stopped. That might have been just to move us off of the sentiments of both sides. And everybody's freaking out over the facts and what the facts are. And the FBI is not releasing this, and they're doing this and that. And, they're trying to spin people up, and everybody's pulled every which way. But just settle down. Just pay attention to what matters, the sentiment.
Yeah. And the thing is, just as an example, Steve, you were talking about the bullet thing. I have seen pictures, real pictures. Bullets do weird things in human bodies. People trying to make a conspiracy theory out of what did or did not happen. It's all, okay, we're 15 minutes in. It's all bullshit. I have seen pictures of the strangest things happening but you wouldn't know that if you weren't, deeply involved in this. And so they can use your lack of knowledge to get you off of the actual problem. And that's what we want to focus on tonight. The actual problem.
So I'm not going to get involved. I'm just going to eat popcorn. So I'm wondering, what kind of popcorn popper should I invest in?
You know, I want one of those ones where you like stick it over a gas stove and it's, you know, and it's got the little hand crank on it, right? You know, I want one of those.
Oh,
I'm old school like that.
Do you have a gas stove?
I do actually.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So you'd be set even if the electricity went out, because you got to get one of those long stick lighters.
Yeah.
Because you're going to need to light your stove. You're set.
I actually I chose where I live with some care. So okay, let's start here. That was our very long 10-minute intro. I'm going to start with, I've got a couple different passages to read, and they're going to inform everything that I've worked through in my notes, and the notes are kind of helter skelter, so we'll see what order they actually pop up in. I've been, I was texting the guys earlier, and I was saying, my notes just keep growing on this one because we're dealing with a lot here. So, can you guys read that, or do I need to make it bigger?
I can read it.
A little bigger. I can squint.
Okay, is that?
That's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is as you can tell, this is a book I own on Kindle. So, as you guys know, a little bit of background, we've talked about this before, but I use a model called the turning model, which is William Strauss, Neil Howe, for categorizing these sorts of things. And we are in what they would call a fourth turning or a crisis era. And so I wanted to read this because I think this is going to help set a great background for where we are today. Fourth turnings have furnished the great pivot points of the Anglo-American legacy. We are now in the seventh turning. These turnings go back to the War of the Roses in England. Each of the six completed since the 15th century generated its own facsimile of the halcyon spirit that today's aging World War II veterans remember so vividly. From the similarities of these crisis eras, a chronology of common phases can be constructed. During the prior unraveling, the unraveling is the period, he uses a seasonal model, so the crisis is winter, unraveling is fall. Things are not bad, but they're getting worse. They are unraveling. The crisis is usually foreshadowed by a precursor, an emergency that temporarily galvanizes society. A crisis era begins with a catalyst, a watershed event that produces a sudden but lasting shift in the social mood. Once catalyzed, a society experiences at least one regeneracy. There's usually more than one, which reunifies the community and re-energizes civic life. And I want to stop here for a second. Regeneracy is an inartful term because he's trying to describe something that doesn't make a lot of sense. You've got community coming together, civic life. A civic life here is not just political. It's a whole number of other culture as well. People become re-engaged in the culture. But one of the things that's happening in a regeneracy or a regeneration is that the culture is starting to reform shared norms and moralities. That's the regeneration part of it. Okay. And so it's an inartful word for a lot of things that are going on. And if you look around, you can start to see that there is an increase in shared a shared understanding of the world. I know that doesn't make sense, but and we'll get into this later about some examples of what I mean by that. So I'll keep reading for now, and we'll get into that later. The regenerated society eventually reaches a consolidation where everyone understands that their new community is engaged in a true struggle for survival. We are not here yet. Okay, I want to make that very clear. We are not in the consolidation yet. It is coming. The consolidated society propels towards a climax, a crucial moment that confirms the death of the old order and the triumph of the new. The climax culminates in a resolution, a triumphant or tragic conclusion that separates the winners from the losers, resolves the big public questions, and establishes the new order. Okay, now I have to jump a bit here because, okay, now we're just going to go through where he thinks, we are sitting in terms of that chronology I just read. Let's recap. America has thus far traversed the first 3 stages of our crisis era chronology. The precursor was the post 9/11 war on terror. And when you guys think back to 9/11, it was this big moment that galvanized the country, but it didn't stop the unraveling. That is very characteristic, right? The catalyst was the global financial crisis of 2008, which triggered the Great Recession. And again, if you think back, there was the mood of the country before 2008, and there was the mood of the country after 2008, and they are always invariably different. I have a long list of charts that can show you that we started something called a silent depression in 2008. So naturally, people's moods have shifted as expressed by their economic choices. So that's an example of what we're talking about here. So we have done precursor, we have done catalyst. Now, I want to say something. Neil Howe is not a Republican. He is not a conservative. He is an academic liberal, although he does trend a little bit libertarian. So when you read this, understand that this is coming from a guy who did not necessarily like what happened in 2016. And the first regeneracy was the election of 2016, which essentially divided the country into 2 partisan and irreconcilable camps. So remember that a regeneracy is not a rebirth of society. That is the climax and resolution phase. A regeneracy is the society coming together and it's a separation of you're in this camp and you're in this camp, and then eventually the 2 will fight it out and one will win. So go ahead.
There was another aspect of this regeneracy. Housing prices crashed into 2008. They've bounced back. They've regenerated. Okay, it's not quite the same as it was. It's kind of an echo effect. Even though they've reached the same levels, it's not across the board. It's not everybody benefiting, and the economy has recovered. There's some regeneracy there, but it seems like kind of a thin, shallow recovery where
it is.
The upper middle class have kind of recovered. The lower classes really have not ever recovered.
Right.
That's maybe part of that divisive.
It is actually that is a key. That is the housing market actually in our current turning is a key marker of this, because
and that's going to get interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So here's a fun stat. Boomers are 20% of the population, own 40% of the houses, and over 50% of all sales are to other boomers. Okay, so the younger generation simply don't have the money to buy boomer housing, so the boomers are selling to other boomers. It's a game of musical chairs. That is exactly that's exactly what Steve is describing here. So what you will see
I like
is
how you put it. Game of musical chairs.
It is. So what's happening in this case is when these when the catalyst happens, the society fractures, and the regeneracies are the society reorganizing itself into different camps, and the fracture lines are being, I guess, if you want to talk about regeneracy, the fracture lines are being worked through. They are being repaired, but it's never repaired in the way it was before. It's always two new camps, right? So in the aftermath of 2008, you saw this huge slide into a disunified everything in culture. Okay.
I tweeted this Monday, I think. Divisive consensus building. Two factions, each building a consensus view.
Absolutely.
And it's building. Is that what you're talking about?
That is exactly what I'm talking about.
And I tweeted that before we discussed any of this, or reading the book, or even before I knew what Plutarch was going to talk about. But it seems fitting.
Yeah. Nick, what were you going to say?
Well, I think it's also fitting as the boomers are fading out of the limelight and majority. It's their offspring that everyone has to deal with now.
Yeah. And and Neil Howe he's a demographer, and he actually is the one who coined the reason you use the term millennial is because Neil Howe and William Strauss coined that term in their first book. Like that's how important these concepts are to him. And so the boomers they are the children of the prior, what he would call spring, or the prior American high period, highly unified culture, highly, everything was good. They were the last children. They were the children of that. They are leaving. All that remain, well, not all, because there are still boomers alive, but the generations that remain never experienced that. So that's, yes. Now remember, and this is a key point, most turnings have more than one regeneracy. He does a taxonomy. There are crisis periods that only do one, but the current crisis period does not look like it's going to be one of those. After its first regeneracy, our chronology suggests that a nation can only move in a limited number of directions. Does this not feel like what's been happening? On the first path, the initial animosity between two factions grows until sooner or later a climax-defining conflict breaks out between them. This is essentially the story of the Civil War and War of Roses and the War of the Roses crises. On the second path, one faction achieves political dominance over the other and leads the United Nation into a climax-defining conflict against an external enemy. This was essentially the story of the Armada crisis and of course World War II. A third and more complex path brings into play a second regeneracy, which at some points redefines the two factions, altering the key issues and constituencies before moving on to a climax. In the American Revolution and Glorious Revolution crisis, Glorious Revolution referring to the English Glorious Revolution, this second regeneracy occurred after.
Right?
Yes, This second regeneracy occurred after the era's largest mobilization and war. In the Great Depression, World War II crisis, it occurred before. Okay, so these things can move around. So World War II had that more complex second regeneracy. There's some really cool reasons for that in terms of history. So I'm going to read this because I'm going to keep reading because I think this applies to us. These historical precedents imply a few obvious scenarios for the remainder of what he calls the millennial crisis era. Take your pick. Scenario 1. The political red versus blue polarization of the 2016 regeneracy worsens until it ultimately culminates in a climax-defining civil conflict. Scenario 2. One side, red or blue, achieves a decisive political victory over the other and leads the nation into a climax-defining conflict against an external threat. Scenario 3. The current red-blue partisan divide is redrawn by a new regeneracy, probably in an election, and possibly with changes in party leadership, before pushing the nation back down paths 1 or 2. And he goes on to talk about a fourth and very different scenario. I think current events have invalidated that scenario, so that's why I'm not reading it. But basically, it's America gets pushed into a the gridlock becomes the new normal kind of thing. I don't think
Yeah, it
that's
doesn't apply anymore.
yeah.
Basically, everybody's saying we can't live with each other.
Yeah, I mean, back when he wrote this book, that could have still happened, but anymore, I don't think that applies. I mean, and this book is a couple years old at this point, so yeah. So this is all the interesting thing that I find about this, as you know, somebody who likes to nerd out about history, is all of these kinds of things have happened before. Yeah, the details are all different, but the broad strokes of human history. Yeah, Andrew. Well, here the thing is we're not required to go to an external war. That is an outcome. But as we said in our recent geopolitics video, who do we fight? You know, people will say China. Yeah, okay, we go park a couple destroyers in the Strait of Malacca and we choke China off. It's not really a war so much as it is a long distance siege campaign that's very cheap to run. It's not really a war. It has to be a defining conflict. It has to, you know, there's the world before World War II and there's the world after World War II. And they're very different worlds. Okay. China doesn't have the horsepower to drag us into that kind of conflict. Because frankly, because they need us. Over half their exports go to the United States. They get into go ahead.
They have all their own problems all the way on the other side of the world anyways.
Well, we've done videos on that too, haven't we, Steve?
Yeah. Let me put it this way. It may benefit China and other countries to saber rattle. And we all know Trump, he's full of bluster and he's, likes to thump his chest and basically saber rattling. And so there's a lot of overt conflict between the big boys, but nobody really wants to actually do anything about it, but get everybody concerned about it and worried about it. Yeah, that sounds like fun. Meanwhile, there's all these little skirmishes between smaller nations, and yeah, we'll dabble there a little bit, but there's a lot of caution, and so it doesn't escalate. So I don't see a world defining or a world involvement where it's a major threat, that we're going to mobilize everything and go do it.
And it is not required, as we can see here, it is not required that a conflict be an external conflict. From the standpoint of, and I have some notes on this, from the standpoint of the culture, particularly one as insulated as the United States, an external war is in many ways preferable, because an external war, it is painful, but you come together as a community. Everyone comes together. They, bygones are bygones, and we all work together and we create the new world. Okay. Yes, that you endure hardship, but you don't have to endure the kinds of hardships that break down your own community. Because the United States is basically a floating war island of itself, it's very difficult for other nations to impact us here. And so you're not having to worry too much about, getting a bomb dropped on your house, like, say, Britain was in World War II with the Wunderwaffen.
Well, if they really thought Trump and whoever the powers that may be and the other players, if they thought a global war was in the cards, and then they're always looking out 2 to 4 or 5 years. If that was the case, then when Trump started his terror-force, they would have actually started to do some things to start investing in manufacturing plants here. And there would be a movement in the education area to enhance our math training in schools and emphasize engineering and some of the more hard sciences in the university. What happened when we entered the space race with the Soviet Union? Sputnik went up. We're focusing on math and science, and we're doing all this, and there was a push. They got it going that way, but none of that stuff is happening. I don't think there's any imminent war, but they want us worried about one.
Well, Steve, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the whodunit. It doesn't matter. They, for the same reason that the they want you agitated about an external war so that you're not paying attention to the one that's brewing right under your feet. Okay, Andrew, you have a question here, and I can address this. What does the dilution of the nature of a cohesive people by way of the migration factor in? I would go so far as to say that the purpose of such migration is, the point of it is the dilution of the people. However, at no time in human history has such an action ever actually resulted in the fragmentation and dissolution of that people. There is because before you can get enough people in, the existing people put their hands, put their pitchforks up and go, hey, wait a minute, this is my tribe, I don't want this. And they just start going on a pitchfork rampage.
Well, let me point out a possible scenario here. On the right, the real patriots, the guys who are against all the rainbow stuff, and we'll just leave it there. The immigrants are not welcome on their side. They're not promoting them. They got to go over to the left side. And the left will welcome them for now, but no, the left is worried about the right. and they got enough problems. And so if the immigrants are over there causing strife among their group, they're going to get tired of them and say, "No, you're out of here. We can't deal with you." And then we end up kind of going into a recession and jobs get tight and nobody's got money. And, there could be a lot of reverse immigration. These people might just pack up and go home because they don't like the way things are here. And so, yeah, they were somewhat of an irritant for a while. But if things get serious, I don't think they're going to stick around.
Okay, this is out of order of my notes, but I actually had a message in here that I've worked with immigrants. My wife is an immigrant. Okay, I'm familiar with the system, and how it works, but also as a student of history, I have a bit of a plea, really, particularly to economic migrants. If you are an economic migrant, you're here to expropriate. Thank you, Shu. She'll be glad to see that we approve. If you're an economic migrant, I would strongly suggest that you leave now. The best case scenario for you, if you stay, is that you end up becoming cannon fodder for the left. The right won't take you. And I mean, Twitter has made that absolutely clear since the great Twitter blow up of Christmas 2024. The right won't take you. So your only choice is going to be the left. But just like you are economic fodder for wage suppression by lefty big corps, you will become the left's actual cannon fodder. Because the thing is, the left, the people on the left, and I actually have some cool videos to demonstrate this, they don't know how to fight. But you economic migrants come from countries and backgrounds that do know how to fight. You're the only option they have, but that means that they have to stick you in between them and the lead. So that's what I would say. If you're an economic migrant to the United States and you don't want this to happen to you, leave now.
So can I put out an analogy? You're in a movie theater. You're watching this great film, and it's so exciting and wonderful, and you're enjoying it. And all of a sudden, you smell smoke. Well, you can ignore the smoke and keep watching the movie. And then, once you see flames, one or two things. It could be too late to get out. Secondly, all the exit doors are going to be jammed with everybody trying to get out. Does that illustrate your point, Plutarch?
Yeah, it does. If you're an economic migrant and you have somewhere else to be there. Because when this goes down, the economy is not going to do well. It's going to be very hard to be an economic actor, and we're not going to talk much about the economy tonight, but as the economy falls apart, the sentiment against the economic migrants is only the negative sentiment is only going to increase, because they're going to look at you and they're saying you're just a indentured servant who is stealing a job that I could have. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
What kind of American are you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So if you stay, if you think, oh, well, I'll just stay because I can do this cheaper, that's just painting a target on yourself as saying, I'm here specifically to screw over Americans. Well, Americans are going to be like, okay, fine, fuck you in return. And so I said recruited to being cannon fodder, but the reality is you'll be pushed into it as well.
And you you will lose on the ground because look what happened. Andrew has an interesting comment. They don't pack up and go home. And America is not Britain. We are not France. We are not Germany. We are a very, very armed people with a lot of people trained in war.
Well, I think there was a time that a lot of Muslims did pack up and go home.
They're forced.
Well, sure. But a lot of them left because they saw the handwriting on the wall. When the Moors left Spain, were they all forced, or did some see what was coming and say, yeah, I think I'll move now?
Oh yeah. Oh no, the you can actually get them to leave. You might have to be a little more physical with it. But yes, they don't want to. Their religion says that they shouldn't, right? You know, but
Hey, I'm not saying they're going to leave now.
yeah, no.
When things get dicey, then okay, yeah. I have family
Many of
at
them will.
home. And remember, a lot of these economic migrants came to the U.S. so they could earn money here and send it home.
Oh yeah.
If all of a sudden they can't send money home because they don't have a job and they're not earning any money, there's no reason for them to be here anymore. And then they'll go home to family because at least they can cooperate with family for survival.
Well, you know, Steve, it's funny you bring that up because we can actually see that happen even in times not as bad as this. In 2008, it was estimated that some 3 million South American migrants went home. Why? Because the economy fell apart. So they do this even when it's not looking like we're headed down a super dark path. How many more do you think will, to use the term of the day, self-deport when it does look like things are going to get really dicey for economic migrants? And so, you know, I'm asking the economic migrants to leave because I don't want to see this happen to them.
So we have another case. Let me ask, what happened to the WAPs during World War II? I'm using that affectionately because I know for a fact there were a lot of Italian men who came over here and they were without papers, WOP. They were WAPs. And they earned money here and sent it home to their families and would go back to visit every couple years. But remember, when we hit then we hit the Great Depression. What did they do then? I don't know. And then Italy was certainly on the other side during World War II. So I don't think they wanted to be on the wrong side of the lines. They wanted to be there with their families. So my guess is a lot of them left the U.S. in the right around 1930.
Yeah, I don't have any migration data on what the because here's the thing. We actually do know that a lot of Italian men fought in World War II. The military was careful not to send them to Italy. A ton of them joined the Marines and went off
But those
to the
were
Pacific.
Italian Americans. There were a lot of
Yeah.
illegal Italians working in this country in the 20s.
Yeah, I don't know where they went because they would have actually ended up.
Not been. I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never
know
thought
that
of it till now. I don't know if anybody ever studied it or recorded it. Probably somewhere someone did, but
Okay,
it's
Andrew,
not
you
really
have
something of interest.
Andrew's on fire with the questions today. What's the breakdown between economic migration and the dilution to destroy destroy America, cohesive people? The answer is there is no difference. All migrants are almost all economic migrants are here for economic reasons. The only migrants that aren't here for economic reasons are some, not all, but some of the women who married who married into the country. Some of those women are absolutely here for economic reasons, but not
passport
all of them.
brewing.
Yeah, exactly. Passport broing, which is a whole nother topic we could do, but not for tonight. So the reality is that there isn't actually that much difference, but the fact that they're here primarily for economics gives us a relatively easy way to convince a lot of them to leave. We just have to go into a depression to do it. As Steve was saying, with the Italian Americans, 1930, they're here for economic reasons, and they're just kind of not here anymore. Like, we don't actually know because they didn't have documents for us to track. So,
and I don't know how many there were. I mean, there were thousands, definitely. Like, there weren't millions.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that the purpose of economic migration is to convince people to come in to dilute the American people. I've seen that argument made.
Sure.
I don't know if that was strictly speaking the intent. Never,
No.
Yeah, I think money was the intent.
I think there might have been some Marxist intent going way back, but the companies themselves, it's all about profit, basically, profit margins.
Wage suppression. Yes, that I think that is. They would look at that. They would look at the wage suppression and go, "Oh, we're making you more equal," and oh, by the way, they get this. They get the benefit of making themselves feel good because they're importing the downtrodden and lifting them up.
That would require an intent to conspire, a conspiracy, and
profit.
proving intent
Profit might be enough.
But you got to prove intent, and it's never really possible to know the intent of what people are pushing, of an agenda or an allowance that people are pushing.
So what Nick described is known as Occam's razor.
We see the effect.
Yeah. Well, and what Nick is describing is Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is the most likely explanation. And the most likely
Mine's simpler, though. They're midwits. They're stupid. They're not thinking ahead.
Well, they are not thinking ahead because they're driven by short-term profit motivations, right? The whole game, if you're a CEO, is to all of these problems that are occurring now, you need to not be the CEO when they happen so that you're not the one that people bring the pitchforks for. Like Steve Ballmer, Bill Gates. I mean, Satya Nadella is not a good CEO, but he's the one in charge right now, so he's the one we think about. But H-1B stuff was happening at a high rate under Ballmer and under Bill Gates. They were all doing it too. Man, Andrew's lighting up the chat today. Will the NGO still pay them to stay? Only so far as they have the resources to do, and only if they're useful in another way. And only if they want to stay and get paid that way. The NGOs don't pay as well as the actual jobs do, so most will just leave to go home with family.
One other thing. If the NGOs are getting money from U.S. aid or U.S. government, they have the money to funnel through. If that gets cut off, yes, they do have other sources of money, but that would be capital of their supporters. So people have to start dipping into their wealth to support the NGO to pay the people. Well, that depletes capital of whichever entity is doing it. And they're less inclined to spend their own money than spend someone else's money to do that.
Yes. So, in fact, I would say the destruction of the NGO network probably needs to be priority number one for the conservative movement over a long list of things, because the destruction of the NGO network is what hastens the decline of this. There's a Twitter account. If you don't follow her, go follow Data Republican. She has been doing fantastic work mapping out these networks. She actually even did some work on the Charlie Kirk thing and it's part of the reason I was looking at it. I say, I don't think there's if there's foreign money involved, it's highly indirect, and we can get into that later. But if you guys aren't following Data Republican, go give her a follow. You will learn more about how this stuff is actually handled at a day-to-day real level, and you guys can start arming yourselves with knowledge there. And I would strongly recommend you do that. Knowledge is going to be, if we're going to survive this, good data is going to be the reason we do. So, you know, although it's funny you bring that up, because I was talking with my dad a couple days ago, and we got to talking about this, and we had an interesting observation. I asked him a question, and he had an interesting observation. Looking at how these generational cycles progress in a hardship culture, the tribe tends to have a unified cultural story about itself. Okay. And because the tribe agrees on the narrative, facts tend to become more important. Okay. So, but then as the culture expands and it gets better, we fall into what I'm calling luxury culture. Society has time for frivolous pursuits. And luxury culture also tends to be an individualistic culture, because you now have the financial luxury of existing on your own. You don't feel like you need the tribe. And so your narrative becomes more important. Remember, this is an individualistic culture. So narratives begin to dominate the concept of facts. And I was asking my dad about this, and he said, oh yeah, Walter Cronkite. It used to be that the news was reported as this happened and this happened and this happened. And that was just the way things were. And then it was on to the next list of this happened and this happened and this happened. Now, Steve, being a resident conspiracy guy, he might stick his hands up and say, but what if the facts they report are wrong? Well, it turns out it doesn't matter, because the unified narrative means that if the facts are wrong or whatever, one of two things will happen. Either the culture will figure it out, because they have a unified story that they tell each other that they agree on. It's, for lack of a better term, a religion. Okay. In terms of, we have these set of beliefs, we all believe in them, and you're not going to convince us otherwise. So, or they just go, oh yeah, no, those are the facts. And so
hold on. Walter Cronkite, did the Democrats listen to him or the Republicans?
I actually don't know. I'm not that old.
The answer is both. Everybody listened to him.
Yes. Okay. There you go.
So there was consensus there. The facts were the facts.
Yes.
Right now, you have the left media and the right media. There's facts with spin and interpretation on this side, and facts with spin and interpretation on this side. They're kind of both narratives.
Uh-huh.
And so if I watch either side, it just drives me nuts, because I disagree with both, because they're both narratives.
Right. We don't have a single, we absolutely don't have a single unified culture. Andrew, you're right. We don't. We used to. Post World War II, we had a unified culture, a unified story that drove that culture. Now, there's a whole nother stream I could do on what happened as a result of how that war ended, and what was done during that war, and how it actually gave birth to what we see today. That is a whole different stream. And I'm not even the best qualified person to talk about it. My dad has actually done a ton of research on this, and he has many, many things to say. But you are correct. We are not a single culture anymore. Here's another example of that. In the 1950s, IBM suit culture. Everyone wore the same black suit to work. And they did. You had a suit and tie. Now we have this
And
freedom
nice
of
shoes.
yes. Nice shoes. Nick, I see what you're doing there, Nick. Now we have a hyper individualistic clothing culture. Freedom of expression. You can wear whatever you want to work. It's another expression of this individual versus unified culture. Go ahead.
After the news, Johnny Carson came on. Did the Democrats or Republicans watch him? Both.
They both did. They both did.
He was made some lighthearted jokes about politicians on both sides, but he didn't really take an opinion. Now, the late night TV shows, are they do they lean one way or the other exclusively?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yes, they do.
It's not cohesive. There's no unified story anymore.
Yeah.
On one side, Trump's the devil. On the other side, Trump's so awesome.
Trump is Trump is literal the second coming of Jesus. I've actually seen that on Twitter, and I just want to vomit every time Yeah. No, Trump is not.
Or Cyrus. Have you heard the Cyrus? He's the new Cyrus.
Oh God,
too.
No. And Andrew, I would love to, but unfortunately, it's going to be a while before I can get my dad on for other reasons that I can't, personal stuff that I can't get into. It's just going to be a while, unfortunately. But my dad has stories to tell, and I think some of the history of how we got where we are would be a fascinating story to tell. So the key point here is that this is a cycle, and the crisis inverts the dominant pre-crisis culture. So whatever the culture was before the crisis, it'll be pretty opposite on the other side of the crisis. But here's another thing that you guys are seeing. And this actually touches a little bit closer to us. Steve and Nick, you guys, when we were originally coming together to build this channel, you probably remember that we decided we did not want to do a debate channel. Right? Remember that?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we decided that.
No blood sport.
No blood sport debating.
We didn't even have to debate the question of whether we wanted to be a debate question.
Yes, Steve, you are correct. We didn't even debate the question. And that's because we saw something coming. And I don't know if we even recognized it beyond intuition at the time. But after that catalyst event, when society had fractured, debate made more sense, because it looked like debate could be the answer. If we could just come together and talk out our differences, we could resolve the fractures and make things whole again, for lack of a better term. We could, in effect, stave off the coming crisis if we would just debate things. But Steve, what did you say? What was it you said about debate?
I don't remember.
Debate doesn't solve anything.
It doesn't. And I think the three of us had been in enough conflicts. Call it divorce court conflicts. And we'd learned that facts don't matter. And we've all dealt with enough people on the other side, or midwits, where you try and, okay, let me lay it out really simple here. All the facts. So there's only one conclusion that you can draw. And either they refuse to draw that conclusion, or they unconsciously know where you're going. So they'll deflect you along the way. It serves no purpose to try and have a formal debate, because you never convince anybody.
Right. Now, here's the thing. I have seen less and less interest in the concept of debate as time has gone on, even before we started streaming, but definitely in the past 2 weeks. There has been a rapidly rising sentiment amongst the population that the era of debate is over. We will not, people are coming to the realization that we will not get out of this by talking, that it's going to take something else. Ironically, the debate is over what that something else will now be, but this is what happens in crises is eventually the crisis pushes you to a point where you can no longer debate things. You just start saying, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and we're going over here.
Okay. I noticed the failure of debate when I was pastoring in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. We had these guys that were right. They're speaking. I was one of them. We were speaking historic truth. We were pointing out false teaching. We were open to debate. But what did they do to us? They smeared us. They used the powers that be to shut us down and kick us to the curb, basically. Some of us got, suspended and administratively removed and all sorts of crap. That's in
Nick,
the conservative church.
Nick, you're actually talking about something that I think is key to what's going on here. People will take this concept of debate and they will pervert it for their own ends. And in the aftermath of the Charlie Kirk event, I noticed something. So as you guys know from a prior stream, I monitor foreign botnets, right? I'm watching different actors, and I have a couple accounts that I watch because I know that they are connected to foreign intelligence services.
Well, I'm getting a lot of bots now too.
You will, because those bots are looking to influence and leverage these events to direct our actions along a certain path. Okay. So here, I'm actually going to name an account that I follow. If you follow this account, please unfollow it. This account is a known actor for the Russian FSB. Okay. And that account name is My Lord Bebo. And he's got a picture of a Great Dane, stylized picture of a Great Dane on his account. This account, in the days immediately following, I think it was the day after Charlie Kirk, tried to say that it was a right-wing person who shot him. Okay. I lost the tweet, and I think it's since been deleted because it landed like a lead balloon. Now, and of course, a lot of people, particularly uninformed people on the right, are going, why would a Russian account, tweet essentially a pro-Democrat message, that it's not the Democrats' fault, it's really the right's own fault. And that's because the end that the Russian FSB cares about is not right versus left in the country. It cares about division and chaos. Okay. So because of that, the agent picked up a narrative that was designed to cause maximum chaos. Not interested in the truth, not interested in any of it. And so when Steve was talking about why whodunit doesn't matter, this is actually one of the reasons why. Because you will have people coming in for their own ends to try and tell you what the actual truth of the matter is. And the chances of you being able to sort that out are basically just they're not there. And I have another example that I'm actually going to share on the screen here. This comes from you guys probably know the name Andy No. He's famous for tracking Antifa cells. And here's what he says. The Antifa cell in Corvallis, Oregon has published an after-action report on the fallout from Charlie Kirk's assassination. They admit fearing the loss of their ability to mark conservatives for death with no pushback, especially as some apolitical institutions, groups, and businesses now feel safer expressing sympathy for Kirk's family and supporters. They also concede that the attacks on Sean Fuchs' Christian worship events have been a PR disaster, with cameras showing masked Antifa militants assaulting families and children at those events. To counter a possible cultural shift away from their dehumanization tactics that are mainstream on the left, Antifa is suggesting exploiting divisions on the right to divide and conquer. They suggest using Israel as a wedge issue. Okay. Now, I don't want to get involved in any of that. The reason that I'm saying this is because this is your enemy. This is your avowed enemy. This is the enemy that has stepped forward and said, I am your enemy. They don't have a principle. They don't have a moral. What they have is, I am your enemy. And if whatever tool they can use to dispatch their enemies, they will pick it up and use it.
They will. But, so is there state actor involvement? Plutarch just said yes. It's after the fact. Everybody has motives and an agenda and is impacted by what happens in the U.S. Russia is, China is, Europe, Britain is, Israel certainly is. Everybody is playing their hand and trying to influence events to lean it this way or that way. I don't know what their intentions are, except to sow division.
Exactly. I don't have it, and it was in Chinese. I had to read a translation of it, but there was an article published by a well-known ranking CCP member in one of their state newspapers, I think, that basically said the death of Charlie Kirk was great for China because he was anti-Chinese. He was anti-immigration. He was anti-communist. Well, I mean, and anybody who knows Charlie Kirk was just going, yeah, he was, right? And so does China benefit from this? Well, yeah, they do, and they said as much after it happened. Yeah, it's like Steve. It's kind of like a game of poker. Everyone has their hand and trying to get the most value.
And if everybody in the U.S. is talking about the division here and Charlie Kirk and whatnot, we don't have much time to complain about China or hate on the Chinese. Has there been a drop in H1B animosity and debate in the last 2 weeks?
Believe it or not, no. But
okay,
it's increased.
Yeah, it's actually increased. Now, in part, that's because Charlie Kirk actually came out anti H1B in the weeks leading up to the attack. But also, I think people did recognize at some level that there was foreign involvement in it, in terms of the aftermath of it, like we've been discussing. And people are like, "Oh, fuck you, just get out of here," you know.
And plus, the stuff in Britain and elsewhere is still on the news. Like it's still, at least on X, it's everywhere. So that hasn't really dropped off too much.
Which I think is interesting because it goes back to that concept of regeneracy. The battle lines are getting more defined, and people are starting to say, "No, we are this and this." Okay, it's not just everyone has their own little individual thing that they care about. People are starting to go, "No, I am against H1B, and I'm against this Antifa stuff, and I'm against these other things." And so the battle lines, if you will, are starting to form.
Well, let me say it a different way. On the two sides, each side is forming their platform. Now, they're deciding, yes, I'm for this, and I'm against that, and that. And the other side is deciding what they stand for. Now,
Mhm.
the foreign players, and I'll just point this out without any animosity, Israel. It's been in the news regarding this. Now, and there has been some controversy over this. And they're concerned that they, pro Israel, they have a vested interest in being on the platform. So they're playing for that. Well, I'm assuming if I was them, I would be playing to get on the platform I want to be on.
Oh, I assume they're all doing that to some degree or other.
Right.
know,
And I'm just using them as an example. So the foreign actors are playing to get on the platform they want to be on.
Right. Like China very clearly wants to be on the communist side of the platform, right? Like they, I mean, they're communist. It follows. So when you're trying to evaluate foreign influence, you have to look at not what for many, many years, the conversation always stemmed about, well, why do they do this? It doesn't, it, it was always going back to Russia. Russia was, oh, the Russia hoax and this and that. It was always, well, Russia is helping the Republicans. Well, no, not really. They're just sowing chaos and discord. Okay. It just happened to be that leveraging Republican ideology was the fastest and most effective way to do it. Okay. The moment it's not the fastest, most effective way to do it, they'll go leverage the Democrats. They don't care. You have to treat it. You have to be able to step outside of your own political bubble, your own cultural bubble, and say, "Oh, these people don't care about any of that. It's something else. Their interest is elsewhere, and their interest is elsewhere." Um, you know, and frankly, anybody who thinks that, I mean, okay, I've got another one, and unfortunately, Nick and Steve, in order to play this, it's a video, but I want people to hear it, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to mute you guys so that we don't get feedback because of how I have to play it. It's a Twitter video, so I have to play it a different way. So here, give me a second to get set up for it. Share audio. There we go. And if you can hear it, let me know when I put it up there, and put a thumbs up if you guys can hear it.
Kathy asked a question that is a hot topic of debate internally, Leah.
So, for context, this is a post by a fellow named Mike Shelby. If you don't follow him, go follow him. He's a retired Army Intel S2, and he has, in fact, a network of people who have infiltrated leftist organizing networks. What the video you are watching is from a Zoom meeting that I believe the network is Indivisible, I believe is the name of this organization. And they are talking about what color and symbol to use for the 2028 color revolution that they are planning. So, Steve, I
Turn up the volume.
okay, I did. I had it at half on Twitter. So, okay, here we go.
Kathy asked a question that is a hot topic of debate internally, Leah. We need a national symbol of unity to stand against authoritarianism or for pro-democracy. I'm interested in using purple bandanas. It's not about being red or blue. It's about standing in solidarity with each other for democracy. How can we as a group come up with something we can stand behind? So we have had this conversation internally and with a lot of the No Kings Coalition and other folks, and we're circling around an idea that, Leah, we're not allowed to fully announce anything yet.
Well, I mean, so we're actually, I would just say, we agree this is a gap, and
Yes,
one of the things
yes.
we're tracking and trying to figure out is like what's getting organic pickup that we can start to pull out and capitalize on, right? And so thinking about things that we're seeing pop on the internet, things that we're seeing start to like take off in places like Reddit. The color yellow and black have come up a lot, which is obviously very like, kind of people taking pieces of the No Kings logo and running with it as a color scheme. We agree this is like a need, and what we really want to do is try to figure out like what's already starting to organically take off that we can collectively come in together on. But we hear you, and we think this is something that we're very much thinking about right now.
We had a whole hour-long meeting with folks. Was it yesterday, Leah, just on this specifically? So it's one of the challenges, and something that we discussed, is when you try to seed something like this, when you try to grow something like this, you start with an idea, and we can all, like, you can debate, like, it should be purple, it should be yellow, it should be green, whatever it is. And one challenge is settling on what that idea is that you want to push. And then you've got this period in between when you've settled on the idea and when you actually make that a cultural phenomenon. And in the in-between period, what you need is a lot of people who say, screw it, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to be one of the first movers out there who's just, I'm all in yellow, or I've got my yellow bandana, or it's, whatever it is. And we're going to need a lot of people who do that. So this group, once we have something, we are going to be asking all of y'all to help be the first movers on this, to make the thing a thing. Hopefully we'll be ready to come back here soon and try to push on something like that.
Okay. Did you guys able to catch all that?
Yeah, they're trying to decide on the color. I put a couple text up there. He advocated purple bandanas, and then she was talking about yellow and black, and when they're trying to seed something in an organic movement, and blah, 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 blah. And we had a long meeting about this. Yeah, I mean, leave it to the left to worry about colors and coordination of their fashion statement before they move.
Well, Steve, there's another thing. Did you catch that where the guy was talking about the gap between when we make it a cultural phenomenon, we just need people to organically get up there and take this on and make it their own? That is the left. They plan their organic events, right? But here, the other thing is, note the level of sophistication of understanding about how these things work. They know that they can't go direct from, we've chosen this to that being the cultural phenom. They know that they need agitators to make it a cultural phenom. So whenever
that was the term they're trying to recruit agitators. Yeah.
Yes. And so they will now use their agitation networks to make the thing a cultural phenomenon. So when you start to see people who are not directly associated with these groups, but are adjacent to them. I have friends like this that I monitor and very occasionally interact with. And I use the term friends loosely here, that I will know when they have reached their level of cultural impact. When these people start organically wearing those colors, they don't even necessarily understand that they're doing it, but it's very important to see that is something that is coming down the pipe. And so, we were talking about, they are talking about a color revolution scheduled for the 2028 election season. They do not, I think it's probably 2026 is probably just too soon for them to be able to get their organization and networks up and running. And Mike Shelby, by the way, he agrees with this. And if you remember, guys, we made a prediction about what year, Nick? What year was it?
2029.
Oh.
2029.
So some of this, at least for me on my side, actually came out of listening to stuff like what I just shared with you. But go ahead, Steve.
Let me point out, we saw a phenomenon similar to this in the last, it must have been 3-4 years ago. Remember the pink pussy hats?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Somebody got the idea, and then they started to spin it on the media, and then it got airspeed, and it seemed like every somewhat feminist had to join the bandwagon, learn how to knit her own pink pussy hat, and wear it for a day. That was all joiners.
Well, so what's interesting, the
Oh,
interesting
then
difference,
the
Go ahead,
handmaiden tale.
a handmaid's tale, yes.
The with her handsmaid tale, that outfit.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Then the
that's
Black
the current
Fist.
version of that. That's the current version of that, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a difference, though. Remember how we were talking about regeneration points or regeneracy points in the path to Christ through crisis? The right is no
Yeah.
longer going to silently go along with the pink pussy hats. Okay. That's what's changed. The big change is that messaging will go out on leftist mainstream networks and leftist platforms, but it will not go out on right platforms anymore. The right will, of course, note that it's happening because the right noted that it was happening last time too. The last time the right really didn't understand what was happening.
And
Mostly
they were
peaceful
silent.
protests.
Oh,
Mostly
you want to wear
peaceful
that silly
protests.
hat? Go ahead. This time, when something like that happens, whatever color they come up with, and you see someone wearing it, the people on the right are going to say, "What? You're one of them? You fool! What are you?" They're going to get tons of pushback. They're not
Yes.
just. They're not going to be silently tolerated this time around. There won't be violence, but they will be commented on. And remember, our speech has been I don't know what the right word is. Certain kinds of speech are decriminalized now in the US.
Correct.
So there were certain words that you couldn't use in public under the Biden presidency that you can use now.
Yeah. So here's another, and this is a trend that I've noticed. So about 10 years ago, the left spun up cancel culture in a pretty big way. 2015, of course, was the run up to the 2016 election. And that's when they really decided that shutting down speech was going to be an effective tactic. They've been using it for about 10 years. As of 2 weeks ago, it has been hysterical to watch the right leverage that tactic with just sniper-like precision. I mean, the right has perfected the tactic that the left created. But it does mean that the right is about 10 years behind the curve. I think the right will catch up, but this is just another thing, another piece of the trend I noted. The left started wielding political violence about 5 years ago. Anybody remember the Summer of Love? The mostly peaceful protests or riots?
Yep.
That was about
BLM.
5
and
years ago.
Antifa together. They're kind of joint together. Antifa was in on that too. So.
They absolutely were. Data Republican actually broke down that BLM and Antifa funded each other. There's a whole network going on there. And Antifa would fundraise for BLM, and they would swap. It's a whole mess. And 2029
and corporations were so influenced by the bandwagon that they contributed massive amount, millions of dollars to BLM.
Mm-hmm.
Humiliation rituals.
This time around, I think the whole atmosphere has changed. So I think the corporations are going to try and stay out of whatever strife comes. They're not going to take sides.
I actually agree with that. Andrew, this is an interesting point, and I think you're correct. A big part of the problem is that most of the right is in the left's frame. That is true, but I think part of what you're watching is the right is decoupling from that. This is not a process that's going to happen quickly. Okay. This is, we keep, Nick and Steve and I, we keep harping on 2029. That's 4 years from now. But what you saw, I believe it was Mike Shelby actually who said this. He said that he did not see Charlie Kirk as a trigger event. He saw Charlie Kirk as an acceleration event. Things will move faster from here. It's going to make, in many ways, our job harder. As we are the analysts who like to give things a couple weeks to percolate. And that's part of the reason we've waited until now to do this video at all. And really the theme of this video really didn't coalesce until a few days ago when Steve sent his "whodunit doesn't matter" text. That's when I was like, okay, no, I know exactly how I'm going to take this now. And that's going to make our lives harder, but we'll deal with it because that's
you're
the
missing.
job.
It's like you're missing another phrase. It's like missing the forest for the trees.
Yeah. And so we're going to be behind on stuff, but we would rather deliver accurate, useful information than whatever the latest emotionalism is.
There's another aspect that was revealed to me, because I listen to different sources than Plutarch and Nick. Most of the people I listen to are probably 55 and older. And almost every single one of them, and I can't think of an exception, said, yeah, I didn't follow Charlie Kirk. I didn't really know what he was about. I knew of him, but I didn't know what was going on or what he was saying. He was probably a pretty smart guy for 31, but my views at 31 were way different than my views now, and I've moved far beyond that. So you had all us old farts. We're off in our own little world, not understanding what Charlie Kirk was about and what he was leading among mostly young men, guys younger than him. There was a division there, still is. But I think there's probably going to be some moving closer and understanding. The young guys are now maybe going to understand some of us old guys a little better. The old guys are going to say, hey, we need to pay attention to what those young guys are thinking. So hopefully there's more communication and understanding between these two groups. And, the Charlie Kirk following was primarily people on the right. And the old guys that I pay attention to are almost exclusively on the right. I mean, there's a couple left-leaning guys that still have good things to say that are worth listening to, but they're intellectual type too.
Okay, Steve, I have to react to Andrew here because I need to say something that's going to make Andrew not like me very much. Sorry, dude. Love you. Love your work, Andrew. He says the right needs to move past reactive to proactive. Yes, but also really, really no. The right needs to be proactive in certain areas that it has not been proactive since, particularly the regions of institutions and culture. Okay. And the reason I say yes, but also very, very no, is because if you get proactive, that there's a certain kind of proactive that the left is begging you for. Okay. And Andrew, I love it. It's a great lead into the next point that I want to get to.
Well, let me put it another way. You got the progressives and you got the conservatives. The progressives want to move things. The conservatives want things to stay the same. And so they are defensive when things change. So that's a reaction. Defense is a reaction to someone changing things. It's not forcing change. So it's going to be very hard to get the right to force change rather than preserve tradition.
Yeah, I agree.
Reason.
I do think now the right is more open to it, but it does need to be very careful. Now, the right, because of the messaging that's been set up for the past 20 years, the right will struggle to make change even in the places, the institutions and culture. Like I said, the left is still going to jump down your throat. I mean, that's the whole, deleting USA to somehow ending democracy, whatever bullshit, right? Like they're going to try those rhetorical tricks, but they're not as strong as if you get proactive in meat space. You do not want to be proactive in meat space because they will crucify you for it. So that's how I look at this. So here's the thing. The left did start wielding political violence 5 years ago. That was the summer of love. We all know that, what Wisconsin or Minnesota, one of the two had like $500 million in damages done to one of its cities. Minneapolis. Okay. Yes.
That's where it all started. George Floyd.
Yeah.
Minneapolis, they burned many blocks down on Lake Street, along Lake Street in Minneapolis.
Right. So the left has been wielding political violence in physical violence for about 5 years. 2029 also happens to be 10 years from when they started doing that. Precisely on schedule. I do expect, Andrew, what I'm talking about, it's actually great that you got me to say what I said right before I have to say this, because the right will react. And when the right reacts, there's this meme running around on Twitter right now, and it's based on an old saying. The left views political violence as a knob or a dial that you very carefully select exactly how much political violence you're going to exert to achieve your goals, where the right views violence as a switch. It's either no violence. Go ahead, Steve. Nick.
The switch, and about the switch, it's like the break glass. Then you have to pull the switch.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, actually.
There's also a mitigating thing. It's like Trump or somebody knew things were reaching a boiling point. So, National Guard has been deployed. Well, at least to Washington, D.C. It's been talked about in other cities and caught up in the courts and whatnot. But that dialogue that movement has already happened. And that's going to keep order and not allow that summer of love to happen again.
At least not where there are National Guard troops.
And if it flares up someplace else, you can bet your bottom dollar that the Guard will be deployed a lot faster this time.
Oh, yeah. I do think so.
And they're not afraid to kick ass and take names.
So, people have been saying, and so we did a we did a show, goodness, probably a year ago now, actually, where we talked about a civil war. And our conclusion was that it would not be armies lining up in fields shooting at each other. And I have been reading through a lot of my military follows on Twitter, and they all generally seem to agree. The economy will continue. The basics will continue. Electricity, water, etc., will continue. Is anyone familiar with? This is a bit of a reach back, but the Troubles in
Yes,
between.
I am.
Yeah,
when I was a kid, the church was very aware of the Troubles. It was. I was in the evangelical church at that time, but not that we focused on it. But yeah, we were aware of the Troubles in Ireland, Northern Ireland.
So the Troubles actually have a specific term in the military. They are what's called a low intensity conflict. It is a civil war involves tanks and helicopters and airplanes. A modern one would, right? Back
Right.
in the 1860s, that was it would be trains and cannons and warships, right? The modern version would be tanks and airplanes and the like. So the military guys that I'm following, and maybe that's just who I'm following, but all of them seem to agree that we're not going there.
So Troubles, what does it involve? Assassinations, finding someone in the wrong neighborhood and beating them up or killing them. Various bombings of that faction, their house, a church on that side or a church on this side. It's just nasty. But society still functions. There's just a bomb going off over there or over there, and someone gets killed, and okay. And there's a lot of spying, and there's some marches too. It's kind of like a gang war or a mafia war.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up the zoom in too, because that's way too hard to read. This is the United States military's definition of a low intensity conflict. A political military confrontation between contending states or groups below conventional war and above the routine peaceful competition among states. It frequently involves protracted struggles of competing principles and ideologies. Low intensity conflict ranges from subversion to the use of the armed forces. Remember, the armed forces were used in Ireland. And they actually, in the article on the Troubles, they have a picture of, British Army soldiers driving through a town in North Ireland. It is waged by a combination of means employing political, economic, informational, and military instruments. Low-intensity conflicts are often localized generally in the Third World, but contain regional and global security implications. And then they go on to describe how they actually do them straight out of the manual.
Can I tell my joke about the Troubles now?
Okay.
There's a guy out walking alone in Northern Ireland, and he comes upon a gang of people. And they yell out to him, "Are you Catholic or Protestant?" And he's going, "Oh shit, I don't know whether these guys are Catholic or Protestant. So I don't know how to answer." He says, "I'm an atheist." And they yell back, "Are you a Catholic atheist or a Protestant atheist?"
Well, Steve, there are no atheists in foxholes, and the low intensity conflict is a giant foxhole. At which, if you see a revival in the church, you'll see it via that direction. Andrew, absolutely. A lot of conflict will be presented as just street crime. Absolutely. I mean, you already saw that during the Summer of Love, right? Oh, it's just a few rioters. It's just a few, this is just gangs and street thugs, and this isn't anything organized. Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is that is most of what it is. Mike Shelby has go ahead.
That brought up something. The Troubles was a religious conflict. Is this civil war going to involve religion? So let me ask Nick. The churches that fly a rainbow flag and say all are welcome versus
Not even
the more traditional minded churches. Not, and it's, the Catholic churches are not going to be exclusively on the right side. Let me tell you that. Is it going to be a division in the church caused by this?
it's already there. Okay. Rainbow flags, everybody who believes the Bible knows they're nuts, right? They're probably already denying the Trinity and other things as well. I mean, you might as well just call them universalists, and they're way out in left field. But the younger generation, like me, I've been pushing this for several years, is no, our nationality and our state should return to what it used to be, which was Christian. And this consensus keeps growing, but all the boomers and kind of the nerdy Xers and all the theology bros have nothing better to do than nitpicking on stupid crap. The younger generations are more and more on board, like, no, we're a Christian nation, God's word should guide how our nation operates.
Okay. Nick, you're describing something that we talked about earlier. There is division, but there is also on both sides a unification of the messaging that's happening within the two camps, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, just the whole Charlie Kirk, was it the memorial that they had at the stadium?
Yeah.
Looked a lot like what it is a more bland form than of what I and others have been pushing for years, which is actually just historic, Christianity throughout history until like the 20th century. So
Oh, interesting. So now here the Troubles is actually an interesting parallel here because it was primarily a religious conflict. I suspect that you will see the Catholic Church fracture over this. I suspect you will see the Orthodox Church fracture over this. And the reason I bring up the Orthodox Church is because last week, Nick and I really got into it with an Orthodox Christian chick on Twitter who had the pride flag in her bio. And Nick and I know enough about Orthodoxy to know that just ain't okay there. And this chick tried to say that, well, it's okay because Oikonomia says that we can do this under dispensation, basically from the church fathers. I drive past an Orthodox church that flies a rainbow, that flies whatever the latest flag is for the Skittles people. Okay. Those churches exist in Orthodoxy, and you can get up there and say, no, Orthodoxy doesn't allow that. All you're doing is the no true Scotsman argument, because I can go take a picture of an Orthodox church flying a flag for you if you'd like. And I have connections on Facebook who actually go to that church. That's why I know where it is and what they're doing. That particular Facebook person actually, you guys remember when the whole pride flag thing over your profile pic and Twitter or Facebook was going on. Yeah, this guy who goes to this Orthodox church had that on his profile. So did his wife and kids. It was a whole family thing. So don't the Orthodox church is going to split. The Protestant church is going to. The Protestant church is already fractured among so many different lines that it'll probably just be the various fractions aligning with one or the other. Well, Shu, you mentioned I love this. I got to pull this up. The Crystal Methodists love their rainbow flags. Yeah, exactly. So, what in the Protestant church, because there's already so many fractures, you'll probably see there will be the sects of Protestantism that align with the rainbow flags and the sects that don't. Maybe we'll call it the Joel Webbin crowd because he seems to be the standard bearer for that side on Twitter, at least. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's actually good to know. Yeah. OCA Archbishop Elpidophoros baptized yeah, two men's son. Yeah, sure. Right. I now on the Orthodox thing specifically, the split will probably not be a 50-50 split. There will probably be a splinter faction and the main faction. So I'll give them that credit.
Well,
but
OCA, that's where a lot of the rainbow stuff happens. Rokor, my impression is not so much, or Greek Orthodox.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm just
that's going to
saying.
be where the split is going to be interesting. Is the Catholics.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out.
Oh man, because you have certain dioceses are way more progressive than other dioceses. So, I mean, that's been going on for 20 years. So there's kind of that division. For instance, I will not go to a Catholic church on the Minnesota side of the border. Not gonna happen. But even within a conservative diocese, you're going to have some liberal parishes or more liberal leaning. And if it's kind of a middle of the road parish or a diocese, like the Archdiocese of St. Paul in Minneapolis, okay, that's kind of a liberal area. Minnesota's a liberal state, but there are some very, very conservative parishes there. Probably, I'll put it at 15-20%. So, but we're they all report up to the bishop, they all report up to the pope. But yeah, it's going to be interesting because this division will, if things become heated in this country and there's civil strife along the left, right, and battle lines are drawn and platforms on each side. Yeah, some of these churches, especially the Catholics, man, you're going to see, I don't know how this is going to work out. It'll be interesting.
All I can tell you is that it will be worked out. I've got, we can talk about the troubles. There is one video that I don't have to, you don't need sound. It's just music anyway. But I want to share it with you guys because it demonstrates two things that I think are going to be important for the next few years for you guys to pay attention to. I will play it and then you guys can tell me what you think. Every one of those people in that video was a transformer.
Okay. They didn't look smooth. It's like boom, boom. I mean,
No,
they're just
they're struggling. I mean, the point of the video is they're struggling with their gear. Okay. So they're not doing very well, and it's kind of haha, you know, they're not doing very well. Oh, looks like Nick's internet cut out. But there's a deeper point here. And that deeper point is that they are training. You know, we on the right like to say, oh, we have all the gats and they can't figure out what bathroom to use. Well, it doesn't matter if they can't figure out what bathroom to use when they're shooting at you. And they
You
are
know what really makes me angry? The stone wall.
I figured this
There's
might
one
get
stone
Nick.
wall. There's one stone wall. General Stonewall Jackson.
was he on the right side or the wrong side?
Both.
Oh, I had to pull this up in part because I knew it would set Nick off, but also
that's okay. But they are training. Don't
Oh, yeah.
don't ever underestimate your enemy. Don't think that they're all stupid.
they're not stupid, and they will get their gear issues sorted out. Like, it's a thing that you can practice your way through, and you can get better gear. And these guys have funding networks that the right wishes it had. There's a part of me that was thinking about getting up on the today and saying this, not because I think it'll happen, but because it's the kind of thing that the left would do. And that's you go to somebody like on the right with money, like an Elon, you say, look, dude, this is what the right, or this is what the left is doing. We need something equivalent on the right. And that's going to take funding. And you're the guy with A, the funds, and B, the reason to do it. I'm not saying that Musk is necessarily the right guy or any of that, but somebody like that on the right to say, you're going to actually have to put some skin in this game. With Musk, you say, look, okay, you want to go to Mars? Great. What skin are you going to put in the game down here to get us there? Because this is what the left is doing to make sure that you can't do that.
I think that will happen naturally, but it will be in a reactive manner.
Yes, I agree.
Because the right is not going to come together cohesive. Not many of them are training. There's a handful who just keep up their skills. A lot of ex-military. But when organized movements start to affect a community, these guys haven't been training, but they have some experience and a history of knowing this stuff. And they can come together in a few weeks and form a local structure. And they'll be rusty, they'll take some losses initially, but not for long. And I don't think it really makes sense to prepare for civil strife, because then it looks like you may have been instigating it.
I completely agree. There's an author and lawyer named Kurt Schlichter, who I follow. He wrote a book called The Second American Civil War that deals with some of these topics. I think he wrote the book intentionally very dark because he's trying to convince people to not go down this path. And I agree with him. But he does talk some about what Steve is talking about, how the left will organize versus how the right will organize. The book is organized as a series of like 40 different short stories, essays. It's in an interview format after the Civil War. and many years after the Civil War, and kind of looking back at the through the lens of different lives who lived through the different experiences, that kind of thing. It's actually a fascinating book. Go read it if you won't agree with everything, but it will definitely stretch your brain and get you thinking about it. So that's something you can do. And he's a retired light colonel, U.S. Army light colonel. So
for something interesting, a historic precedent, you could look at somebody called like John S. Mosby, who's called the Gray Ghost. You should check him out. That might be kind of how it starts playing out, if and when it happens. So.
Yeah. I don't know that we will ever get to coordinated unit level action. I mean, I know what you're talking about. It's actually one of the originations of the U.S. Army Rangers. I don't know if we'll ever get there because the left prefers what we call stochastic terror. Stochastic in this case just means non-uniform random. Okay. So I don't like the left does not want to get into a toe-to-toe gun battle, with some sort of organized force.
He was a very small. It's kind of like he had people on call and they grouped together to undergo operations. It's very localized.
That mentality will be what we see.
Yeah, sure. Right.
So, now we've gone pretty grimdark for the past couple hours. Here's the thing, though. The Troubles came to an end. It was known as the Good Friday Agreement. Most low-intensity conflict ends one of two ways. Either it escalates into a high-intensity conflict, or it just ends. If it escalates into a high-intensity conflict, we have a bigger problem on our hands, and Kurt Schlichter's book is actually more applicable to that kind of thing. His book starts as low intensity, goes high intensity. Historically, that's actually pretty rare. More likely, your low intensity conflicts just end when one side wins. And usually one side does in fact win. They just take a lot longer. I could see all of the 2030s being a low intensity conflict. All of it.
I think the side that's fighting for their children is going to win.
No. You mean they have a reason to fight? Well, Andrew,
now whichever side that might be.
Well, I mean, the left does have children too, not as many. Getting to Andrew's point here, who has the bigger numbers? There's truth there. But I mean, every civil war has in history has never been fought by more than 5% of the local population. Most people just try to survive it. That's the Troubles. That's the what I call the Second American Civil War. The 1860s. The reason I do that is because the Revolutionary War was not called a Revolutionary War at the time. It was called a Civil War. Between British subjects. So, okay. Yeah, whoever has the bigger numbers does tend to win. Most wars are wars of economics and logistics. The problem with that is that if this does escalate out and away from a low intensity, the right has the advantage because the right controls the interstitial spaces. I was reading a post by I can't remember his name. Anyway, I can't remember who wrote it. But they were pointing out that the power base of the left is the cities. There's a reason why the left riots in cities. That's because that's where their power base is. Yes, we know that like in Russia and China, the revolution started out in the hinterlands and the rural areas and moved to the cities. But the communist doctrine does not actually care about rural versus urban. It only cares about where your power base is versus where the enemy's power base is. And the communist enemy's power base is in rural. So that's why you see all the propaganda. You can't live without the cities kind of talking, and the right shoots back with, yeah, but we can cut your cities off. I'll just stop for a second and say, yes, you can cut the cities off, but understand that cities are no more than 3 days away from people going absolutely feral. The left actually wants you to cut off the cities because then they can flood the suburban and rural environments with feral animals who are hungry. Okay. So yes, you can cut them off. Don't think you've won anything, because now you have millions of people spreading through your lands looking for food, basically, and they'll eat you to get it. They will beat you to get it. Which is part of the reason I don't think we go that far. I think on the right, you're going to see restraint, and they're going to go, wait, we can't cut them off, because if we do, they will be unleashed on us. And it would probably also draw the attention. It would probably also draw in the military at that point. The right is probably going to be the restrained one here.
Plus, the distribution warehouses are in the cities.
Yeah.
So everything goes into the city in a warehouse, then logistics, it goes from there out to the countryside.
Rail stations, rail depots are in the cities.
Grocery warehouses.
Well, rail depots are why the grocery warehouses are in the cities. But yeah.
It all comes in by truck now most of the time.
Oh, okay. Well, I know
you
my
have to
city
be a
has
very big warehouse to get anything by rail.
Okay, well, I know that my city has my regional city has a big rail depot in it for this kind of stuff. But yes, no. Go ahead.
I want to ask you another question. We got 3 groups of people. I'm just going to group them into 3. We've talked about before. You got the normies, you got the midwits, and you got the higher intelligence people. How is this divide going to, how do these groups relate to the division?
Well, this has been fascinating to watch, at least on Twitter. The high IQ is breaking hard right. I am watching high IQ people go, fuck you, to the left. I want nothing to do with you. Everything about what you do is bad, evil, whatever. They're like, we want nothing to do with this. This is antisocial, self-destructive. I think the low time preference people realize that what the left is doing is fundamentally destructive to the life that the high IQ want to live. And so they're like, fuck you, we're not doing that. That doesn't mean that all high IQ people are doing that, but it does seem to me that the bulk of them are going that way. The midwits, and this is what really gets me, is the midwits are by and large breaking for the left. And the normies just couldn't give a shit. Now high IQ here. Now midwits here. The breakdown is really. I'm not even necessarily talking about the higher end of the midwit range. The higher end of the midwit range, I think, is broadly figured out, even if they don't understand the full reasoning why. I think the higher end of the midwit range is broadly figured out that this is bad for them. I'm talking about your 105 to 115. That lower section of the midwits, the ones who really are just dangerously smarter than average. These are the people you see who inhabit your government jobs but particularly your university institutions. That's where those people live.
Yep, I would agree. The midwit generally are consensus driven. So they virtue signal by being more consensus driven and more overtly in favor, like rainbow stuff. When that started getting, oh yes, I am so in favor of it, I'm more in favor of it than you, and so I'm going to demonstrate that my virtue among the group. So that's where they were at, which tends to be left. Now there is a faction of those which I would call the tradcons. They're consensus driven, but they're on the right. But it's still really consensus. The higher IQ, I'd say, yeah, they're on the right. The normies, the average, they don't really go in for the progressive stuff, so they kind of stayed more or less where they were at, kind of mainstream. So I think they'll stay out of it mostly. And as things divide further, some of the midwits are going to move right to be a part of the right consensus, but most of them are going to be part of the left consensus.
Yeah, and I think the ones that do leave will be the lower time preference band that realizes that what's coming is not good. And as far as the normies go, what usually happens with the normies is they pick whichever side is physically closest to them, because the normie just wants to stay out of it and be left alone. So they're going to do whatever they need to do to be left alone. Okay, so Andrew has a question, and it's a good question. How does this relate to the ultimate war response that you said the right would go? I did not say ultimate war. I said high order violence. So when the right when the right reacts, it will be with high order violence, and then it'll stop. Boom, done. Okay. Switch back off. Remember, off is an option too, right? And so you will get, out of the right, you'll get these hyper violent reactions, but it doesn't turn into a protracted, multi-month long military campaign. That's the switch versus dial can be, it scales up and down. So
kind of like a SEAL team strike.
Yeah.
They do the damage and they get out, and then we were never there.
That's actually a really good way to describe it. So we've been talking a lot, as I said, we've been doing the grimdark thing, is there a light at the end of this tunnel? And I would say absolutely unequivocally yes, because there will be a victor. The left honestly believes that they are going to create the conditions where the normies, as Steve calls them, will choose to back the communists and rise up in a populist uprising against the right. I can't tell you that that's not going to work. But the general trend, what I think looking back, we will look at the Charlie Kirk thing and the historians will go, whoa, wait a minute. The normies will look at Charlie Kirk and they'll say, I don't agree with everything he said, but the fact that he was gunned down for having ideas that I do share, I'm not joining those guys. Okay. So, the normies will do their best to stay out of it. But this idea that they're just going to join the communist uprising because communism promises equality and rainbows and peace and happiness, the left might have screwed up. And by the way, this is not uncommon in crises. This is not uncommon, to use a more spiritual metaphor. This is not uncommon amongst the evil ones. There always seems to be these subtle mistakes in evil that allow not guarantee, but allow good men to come in and solve the problem and actually remove the evil.
What was that lefty enclave? Was it Portland or Seattle?
It's Portland.
The
Enclave was in Seattle. The Chaz Chop thing.
Chaz Chop. Okay. How long were they able to run things and have?
Oh, it was about 4 months.
Have autonomy.
About 4 months.
Okay.
Until winter came.
How did they get food and fuel and all that?
They had a bunch of local organizers, and I mean that in the community organizer sense, come in and bring them food. They tried to grow their own food. So the chop was organized around a basically soccer field. So they tried to grow their own food in the soccer field, and that did not go well. For all of us patriarchists, a natural hierarchy appeared almost overnight. The women were tending the crops and the men were manning the walls. I mean, even the left with all of their communist idealism cannot get away from natural order. It was just part of the reason.
In Occupy Wall Street too.
Yes,
happened in Occupy Wall Street as well. Yeah.
Yes, Nick, that's a good point. Yes, it did. So I mean, us patriarchs can giggle about that.
Here's the other thing. Numbers, how do the numbers from the left to the right balance out? I'm not exactly sure. Part of me says, yeah, it's going to be similar numbers on either side. But in fact, the left could have bigger numbers. But because of this intelligence difference, the high intelligence people, they're thinking strategically. So, and there's more of them than there is more of the high intelligence people. So they're thinking 3 steps ahead with contingencies and bouncing ideas back and forth. Their ability to generate solutions is greater. The speed which they'll generate solutions is much, much faster. And the implementation will be quicker. And they'll have a more defined hierarchy. So I think they got the advantage. And if you think about that as a economy or a country, where does your drivers for economic advancement come? It comes from all the high IQ people, the great ideas, the new industries, the innovations. That's where it all comes from. And I think the right has a big advantage there.
I actually agree with that. I actually do agree. I think the left has more people. And they certainly have more foot soldier IQ ranks. Oh goodness, yes. Do they have? They've got the 95 IQ band sewn up, and the 85 IQ. Particularly, they have the 85 IQ violent criminal band. They have those. They own that region of the IQ space. This is actually part of why I've been talking about IQ and why I've been trying to lead discussions on this, is precisely because of what Steve said. And the risk is that the left figures that out and starts coming for the high IQ people. Right now, the high IQ people are pretty well dispersed throughout society. There's not a good way to defend them. And we will need to defend them because there are so few of them nominally. I'm thinking about guys like I don't agree with everything Eric Raymond says, and he is a Wiccan, and his views on Christianity I strongly disagree with. But he is very intelligent. He spent time moving in leftist circles, understands exactly how they think, hates them, thinks that they are demons. He does believe in demons, and he actually he was actually even speaking positively about some aspects of Christianity in terms of how Christianity deals with demons. And he specifically said, I absolutely would never worship the Christian demons. He said, I won't do that. There is something real there. And I just thought, well, okay, you're don't necessarily agree with everything you say, but that was a fascinating statement coming from you. Another guys like Devin Erickson, Elon Musk, thinkers, builders, engineers, those guys, but they're spread out across the country. Even the three of us, even in we don't reach the lofty heights of those guys' IQ, but the three of us are all separated by 1,500 miles, and that might have to change. I don't know how any of this is going to play out, but like it's definitely something we're going to have to worry about and think about. And hey, I mean, we are thinking about it right now. So,
I got a question.
Go ahead, Nick.
What happens if I don't know how likely it will be, but key politicians, people, magistrates in power, decide to, let's just say that they pull the plug on it and they decide to resist or go feral.
Okay. Fascinating. You and Andrew just asked the same question in different ways. Every large army needs resources, and it needs lots of resources. Food, of course, water, the basics, but also weapons. Where do the bricks come from that Antifa throws? Somebody had to buy them and move them to where they were going to use them. We've seen that, right? So every large army needs resources. So the small number of high IQ people are already actually do recognize this, and they are working to cut off as much of the resources as possible. You can't get it all. You can't.
And the government people, they can't really go rogue. Because, okay, let's just talk about the police force. This time around, it'll be different. When there is a destructive element that is wrecking shit, they're going to be not so inclined to protect them or move on their side to wreck shit, because most of them have families. So in a time of troubles or civil strife, they might just decide it's in their best interest to look the other way when some of these decisive counteractions happen. And they may not follow orders if the mayor says, oh, you need to protect these people, or you need to just lay down your arms and, move back and let them happen. Let whatever happen. They have seen what happened the last 5 years ago. And do you think they're talking amongst themselves? Do you think they're going to say, oh, yeah, I'll let that happen in my city?
Well, there's even cities where we're seeing the cops, they're in red states, but we're seeing cities where the cops they're already publicly saying pretty much exactly what Steve said. Nope, not in my city. Nope, you can't do that here. And Antifa etc., do not operate in those cities, or operate at a very, very low level. They don't get violent because in those cities it's not safe. And this is probably the biggest Achilles heel of the left, is that the cities are their castles of power, their places of power, but it isn't all of them. Honestly, the West Coast probably has it the worst, just in terms of the number of cities available to them to use. Of course, you guys saw the riots, the ICE riots earlier this year out of LA. Everyone remembers Portland from the Summer of Love, and of course, Seattle, Chaz Chop, and all of that. So the big city, but this doesn't mean that they don't operate. I mean, right now, there was just in the news this morning, some Antifa guy shot up an ICE facility in Texas. They do operate there. They just don't operate at the scale. So you might see, as this continues along, you might see certain cities and states push these people out altogether. I think we could absolutely see stuff like that happen. And in the Troubles in the UK, there were safe cities for both sides.
And there were hot spots.
Oh,
you probably named the hot spots.
sadly.
We could probably throw in a couple more.
Oh, there are more, yes.
Even some in the Midwest.
Minneapolis?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Parts of Chicago, not all of Chicago.
Yep.
Maybe Milwaukee.
Parts of it, yeah.
Madison, I don't know. That's so lefty that it's almost one.
Yeah. it's like, friends.
And then I don't know. Other cities, in Ohio, I'm sure someone from there could name which cities are going to go which way. But I would say the more intense conflicts will happen on the West Coast cities. And maybe some of the East Coast cities, including Washington, D.C., Baltimore.
Yeah. Another one that tipped up that surprised me was Raleigh.
Okay.
Apparently there's a fairly large grouping down there. They haven't made themselves known as much because Raleigh, that's North Carolina, and they are a purple state. So it gets very red right outside the county borders for the city. So they're probably a little more constrained in terms of their operations. Yeah, Andrew, and this is true. In the past 8 years, they have been expanding past city lines into previously red suburbs. This is absolutely true. There was a famous story from Seattle again, where the Antifa types went to the home of the Seattle police chief, and it was definitely a suburban area. I forget where it was, but it was very definitely outside of the Chaz Chop area, and they were going there to demand stuff, and they were met by a bunch of dudes with rifles, and they decided that they were going to turn around and go home. But yes, they're more likely in the suburbs. I'm thinking back to the Summer of Love here. You would see not violent activities, but actual peaceful marches, large people coming together. I actually witnessed one of these where I was living at the time. Don't live there anymore, thank God. And so you wouldn't get the level of violence. And that is how these things operate. They are peaceful when they come. And they whisper all these sweet nothings into the ears of the people around them, and the community organizers are first. The Antifa the foot soldiers, they're later. They're for later. Okay. but the community organization, and they promise you all these sweet things if you just vote for the appropriate candidates, right? And that process has been going on for decades. It's really amped up in the last 8 years, as Andrew noted. You know, and then they start doing more agitation operations, but the agitation is still peaceful. That's going to be your demonstrations, marches, etc. And then once they have the cover of the marches and demonstrations, the foot soldiers will infiltrate those to agitate actual violence. This is the Marxist playbook. I believe this is actually out of Saul Alinsky's work that I'm speaking about here, although these strategies I think have changed a little bit in the modern era for modern tools. The basic concepts are the same. So well, and Andrew, to that point, the model that the left is really following here is the Maoist model. In the revolution in China, in the communist revolution there, the stronghold, the strong place for the Communist Party was the rural areas. And so they actually spent most of the revolution in the rural areas training up their armies and doing it mostly out of sight from the nationalist armies who controlled the big cities like Peking and Shanghai, Guangzhou, etc. You know, the Pearl River Delta cities. And the Maoist militants would strike out at these cities, and when they, you know, they would be rebuffed, and then they'd strike at a different one, and it's all about this destabilization. That model works in reverse, because the model is go from your strike out from your strong point to the weaker zone if they defeat, you know, and then run away if it looks like they're going to defeat you, so that you minimize losses. There's a historian who's currently with the U.S. Naval War College named Sarah Payne. She actually did a whole lecture on this, on how this happened. It's on YouTube. You can go look it up. I strongly recommend that you do, because she does a fantastic teardown of how the Chinese Communist Party did what it did. And when you go watch that, you will absolutely see parallels to how the left is operating in the United States today. So, yeah, I know we are info dumping on you guys a lot. I have been nerding out for the past couple weeks on this stuff. Some of this is stuff that I've been nerding out on for a long time, the history side of it.
So,
well, we haven't.
I tried to allude to this, and you sort of covered it. I'm talking about known like political representatives that align and align with these movements. Do you think that's going to happen?
Okay, I'm going to have to pull up a tweet from Eric S. Raymond here. Okay, let's do this. He's talking about the leftist. The political sides, particularly the leftists, they have a problem here in that they are above ground. People know who they are, right? And so there's limits to what they can do. There's limits to what they can say. There's limits to how far they can go. Okay. And this tweet, I think, captures it very well. Is that big enough? Yeah, it should be. I will read it out for those just listening. It is a high IQ tweet, so unfortunately it does go on for a while because he actually covers all the bases. Here we go. One of Antifa's strategic problems in the wake of the assassination of Charlie Kirk is that there is an inherent tension between its goals, Antifa's goals, and those of its above ground allies, the people that Nick is asking about. Both networks want a communist revolution, but by different paths. Antifa is running a classic Castrite Maoist playbook, direct action and terrorism escalating to armed insurrection. Their road to victory runs through chaos and a weakened government that eventually suffers a general legitimacy collapse. This is classic Marx, Marx, Leninism, Maoism, etc. Okay. Lost my place. The above ground allies are Gramscians. We've talked a little bit about them. You can go look them up.
Critical
It's
Marxism.
Yeah. Antonio Gramsci, he's Italian. He led the Italian communist movement, leading into, and in large part brought about the socialist movement that caused Italy to join the Axis powers during the war. Their above ground allies are Gramscians who have committed to a long march, through the institutions, and institutions being here primarily political and education. The last thing they want is a weakened government and a legitimacy collapse. They aim to take over the state machinery and totalitarianize it, gradually replacing the American civic religion with some variant of Marxist ideology. See social justice and wokeism. Gramscian capture of some portions of the U.S. government made it easier for Antifa to operate almost openly, which is why we're now seeing semi-militarized attacks on ICE facilities. But the assassination of Charlie Kirk changed the game again, leaving the Gramscians with a dilemma about how to manage Antifa. I say manage because the way the communist network is structured for deniability means that none of the above ground leaders are able to give the entire Antifa portion of it direct orders. They have to nudge it via propaganda and suggestions through cutouts, and they have to deal with the possibility that some cells may not get the message or will misinterpret it. As Antifa grows more violent and overt, which is per the Castro Mao Lenin program, the avoidance strategy of claiming it doesn't exist is doomed. Gramscian leaders will have to choose whether to embrace Antifa's revolutionary violence or repudiate it. One of the impacts of the assassination of Charlie Kirk is that it makes this choice very difficult to defer. If you're willing to say he deserved it, you're endorsing assassination and revolutionary violence. Condemning it makes the opposite choice. The political stakes are obvious. The right is successfully mobilizing to dox left allies who endorsed Kirk's assassination and force them out of their jobs. Institutions. What's more worrying, from any Gramscian's point of view, is that this is a grassroots effort, not something the partially co-opted government is organizing. For the first time since Joe McCarthy was discredited in 1954, the communist program of gradual institutional capture is being reversed. To save it, the Gramscians might have to disavow the assassinations in Antifa, allowing the uncaptured parts of the U.S. government to take Antifa down. Antifa is, of course, going to resist this, and it's an open question as to whether disavowal is a move that the Gramscians are ideologically capable of making. Like religious fanatics of other kinds, their capability to make rational strategic choices is constrained by their belief system. Of course, they will use the institutional leverage they have to sabotage and obstruct government action against Antifa. You're seeing that already in the courts as much as they can. But it's not government that's holding candlelight vigils for Charlie Kirk and pressuring school boards all over the U.S. to fire communist tools in teaching positions. And victory feeds victory. There's a real risk that the popular backlash will become even stronger from its successes, especially as Antifa ratchets up the violence level. I don't know which way the Gramscians are going to break. It's not likely all of them will make the same choice, and there isn't any one leader who can enforce that. But they can't avoid choosing much longer. In retrospect, the crisis point might have been something other than the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but here we are. Now, I want to add something to this. As the Gramscians lose control of the institutions, that will actually free up Antifa to operate in a more overt fashion, because the Gramscians will lose access to the political and media leverage and propaganda leverage that they have. So in rooting,
will become more agitated.
Yes. And as the Gramscians get rooted out, they might become more willing to just unleash Antifa and say, no, go for it. Right?
Could be. But in the meantime, these people are selfish and they want to keep their jobs and their power position. So if they advocate destruction and destruction of the government and civil chaos, it's going to be bad for them, and they lose their power and their prestige and their cushy life, which they really want. They just want to be, they want to be the rulers of whatever socialist communist type regime or whatever happens.
Mhm.
So they have a real dilemma that they cannot have violence because they'll lose their position. They cannot protect the violence. They cannot advocate that because, yeah, the populace or certain actors will, if there's a time of strife, these people are actually probably at physical risk. Because if there's shit happening on both sides, they're not immune.
Well, and they're not
They
immune.
have a real difficult choice to make.
They do. And that's, so Nick, you were asking, I think that's the best answer I can give you right now is Mr. Raymond's answer. They're going to have to decide, and they're each going to decide for themselves. I would take his analysis once. Yeah, they do. The Gramscians do. The institutional powers do. He doesn't say it. I would take his analysis one step further and say, as they fragment, Antifa gains power. And Antifa, I mean, we know what they're.
I would see that.
Yeah, well, and we know that they want that anyway. Antifa has never actually been like all that. They get very angry with the left because in their minds, the left isn't doing enough. Andrew, has the last 2 weeks really seen a reversal of Gramscian control of the institutions? Yes, but it's not just been the last 2 weeks. Believe it or not, the first major blow that was struck was USAID. The Gramsci control of the institutions runs through the NGOs and their money and influence networks. And the gutting of USAID, it didn't get all of it, but the fact that we were able to strike that blow and strike it early has weakened their control over the institutions. People you hear people complaining about all the people that Trump's firing. Yeah, he's got to fire a lot of people, and he has been. And as he's doing so, he is pushing these people out. So it's not just the last 2 weeks. I think it's been since February, since February. But yes, they actually have lost control. That's why you're starting to see other things happen, like Google bent the knee yesterday. Google admitted that the Biden White House and the Obama White House specifically targeted conservative and right-wing voices for cancellation. They just said, yep, we did that. Because Google is now scared that the state has that their Gramscian cover in the state has been weakened to the point where Google is at risk. Think about that for a second.
I have an academic example of the loosening up. I listened to Dave Callum, who is a professor of chemistry at Cornell University. He speaks on economic matters, and he is outspoken. He has a lot of theories. He looks into a lot of stuff. He comments on social things too. I would say he's on the right. Anyway, he does get some pushback. And I asked him about that. Are you in danger for your job? And he says, nah, sometimes they come after me a little bit, but it's just kind of for show. Behind the scenes, I'm not really at risk. And, once in a while, so one of the trustees or even the president will say, yeah, well, you're bringing us good notoriety. Of course, here's another factor. His wife's maiden name is Cornell.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it.
And his brother-in-law, is on the board of trustees for Cornell University. His last name happens to be Cornell. So anyway, there are outspoken voices in academia that are actually allowed to speak, and you might see a few more of them come out, and they're having a hard time canceling them now.
Yes. Cancellation as a strategy, particularly as the left implements it, relies on the the vendors, shall we say, the platforms being scared of leftist violence against them. Part of the reason that I say that we have seen a weakening of the Gramscian control of institutions is precisely because businesses seem far less concerned about leftist action against them and far more concerned about right action. And so now, as Steve said earlier, they are adopting a stance of don't hit me. I'm over here just trying to make money. I'm just trying to sell you stuff. I'm not playing either side. I do believe that the days where somebody pointed this out, I think it was Eric Raymond, different tweet. He said, the moment that Musk bought Twitter was the key moment, because as soon as there is one major media outlet that can publish the truth and mock all of the others that don't, the rest, all the other media outlets have to decide if they're going to go all in on propaganda. I'm thinking, your PMS NBCs of the world, or they have to step back and they have to go, whoa, okay, we just need to, because it becomes too easy to expose their fraud and their lies.
How did the leftist agenda for Bud Light work out? Or for Gillette?
Oh, man.
I still don't buy it.
Hey, I don't either. Yeah.
Every time I see it, I think of that crap. And I know they're actually doing a really good campaign to try to bring back their original base, but I don't forget. I don't know about everybody else, but I don't forget.
They lost the bulk of the normie people too.
Yep.
The middle of the road, the beer drinking public, the working class guy, whatever. You know what? I said, nope, not doing that.
And they probably never will. Crisis periods they form a unified culture, and that culture will stick for 20 years after the crisis. So, let's say the crisis ends in 2040. The unified culture is going to stick around for another 20 years after that. You're talking 2060 before it starts to crack again. Andrew, what do the unemployed Gramscians do now? Well, that is a question, isn't it? Many of them will go on to find jobs with the NGOs that they were providing cover for. But not all of them will, because NGO money is tight, because we have taken such a effective sledgehammer to the funding networks there. Many of them will have to take either find jobs that are more time demanding, that don't give them the time to go do the activism, or they will go all the way down the activism rabbit hole.
I have a different answer.
Okay.
Box wine and cats.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of that too.
We also have not addressed. We've touched on this at the beginning, but economically, is this still going to solve our problems? I don't see how this is going to solve the immediate economic problems and the problems of the younger generation, and the problems of people not really wanting to work for society when they've been thrown through the divorce ringer and have their crap taken.
Okay.
Housing market.
Politics is downstream of economics, but economics is downstream of demographics. If you change the demographics, you will change the economics. Remember what we were talking about earlier with the economic migrancy? If you end economic migrancy, a lot of the economic problems just kind of go away because economic migrants are why housing is so expensive. They need a place to live, and they get access to loans that normal people can't get. So you can, and the reason I bring that up is the loans that you can't get are in part legal, from the government, but it's also part NGOs, and so you can see how the Gramscians took over those institutions to create a situation where economic migrants can come and live a better life than an American for cheaper, for less. But if you destroy those institutions, that ability goes away. Now, we need to be talking about this way so that when the government and when the institutions are reformed and reunified in the new culture, that we don't allow that to happen again. And this gets to kind of, more like, what happens post-crisis, which is where I wanted to wind this stream down. But the economics will fix themselves as you fix the demographics. But also remember, the economics of World War II were driven by the economics of the Great Depression. And you had a 10-year depression in the run-up to World War II. Things were not getting better. In fact, interest rates were at their lowest in 1940, not 19. Everyone thought that inflation was going to come roaring back as the government spent all this money, and so the interest rates actually stayed higher, and they did not come down until the end. People really figured out that it wasn't going to come back. And then the crisis. Here's the thing about a crisis: the crisis doesn't solve one thing; it solves all the things. Why? Because of that unified cultural story that gets told. Okay. So
let me
go ahead,
give
Steve.
a short answer to Nick's question. Nick, feminism has jumped the shark.
Well, yeah, it's led to the radical left. It was always part of the Marxist bullshit. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, wait, the phrase, where that phrase comes from?
Happy Days. I actually do know.
Okay, so Happy Days was this great running show. And then the Fonz was out water skiing in his leather jacket. And the speedboat goes around, and this is a big deal. They had a ramp for a water skier to jump up and over. And on the downside, on the other side of the ramp, was a shark pin. And the Fonz went up the ramp, jumped the shark cage, and landed. And it was so stupid. That was the end of the show. It was just all downhill from there. They jumped the shark. They took it too far. Feminism is the same way. There's all these wailing and gnashing of teeth by women, and as the economy turns down, they're going to lose their cushy jobs more than they're already doing. Mm-hmm. It's a luxury that we can't afford to employ women who are less productive. And so all of a sudden, it's like, Chop and Chaz and Occupy Wall Street. They're going to become traditional pretty damn fast. Yep. And then there's going to be this great movement to get rid of no-fault divorce, not in the next year or two, but I'm saying in the next 20 years. Yes. Because women won't want it. No, I don't want my husband just divorcing me for no reason. And they will be the ones who rally to change it. So, yeah, crisis solves all problems in some way or another.
This does not mean that all solutions are good solutions. As I said, there's a whole other stream we could do about how the solutions to the third turning in World War II created the problems that we have today. And in fact, I can guarantee you that the solutions that we choose in this coming crisis will be the seeds of the next crisis. In fact, in all crises, that has been the case. So, but for 20 years or so, it won't matter. There will be a unified culture. There will be a unified tribal story, and everyone will agree to it, and everyone will follow by that culture story and norms and morals and rules. And I don't have the quote up, but Neil Howe, he talks about this. When you look at the times that the United States has rewritten its rule book, i.e., the Constitution, it has always been during a crisis period. We wrote the Constitution in a crisis period. We completely rewrote it again in the next crisis period. And then we rewrote it again in World War II and the run up to it. Okay.
So this will happen. This coming together, this consensus, picking up the pieces, that'll happen after around 2032.
Well, if we're going to do the troubles, it could be more like 2040 that it finally resolves. But yeah,
well, it'll be quieting down. 2032 is going to kind of be the tide will turn then.
Yeah. Here's another observation I noted talking to my dad. This is further back. We've talked about how post-crisis the culture is going to be unified, and we've talked about how the decisions made during the crisis set the seeds of the next crisis. But there is a bit of a oscillation to this. That's the word I'm looking for? Oscillation. The period following the third turning was marked by foreign wars, large-scale political unrest. I'm thinking, the 1970s, of course. You've got the Korean War, then you've got the Vietnam War, and you've got the Summer of Love, the Woodstock era Summer of Love, and then you've got the whole Cold War brewing, and simmering. Pardon my mixed metaphors there. Underneath all of this, and then you've got Iraq 1, and then of course you get to Iraq 9/11 and Iraq 2. However, what you see is that if you go back and look at, say, the first and second American Civil Wars, there was not as much the United States, at least, was not involved as much in foreign wars after that. Okay. I'm reading my notes, and there's one that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to save that because we're already at three, and it ties into the other stream I want to run. My suspicion is that the period following this crisis will be relatively calm for an extended period of time, both domestically and abroad. I think as the United States falls into its civil convulsions, that will wipe out China, and then they will fall into internal convulsions. They're already getting ready for it. I mean, we've talked about that on this show before, and they will have some shit to figure out on their side. But also, you're going to see a much stronger social identity inside the United States. You're going to see much more political unity. I think whoever wins this fight will rewrite the Constitution so that the losers are basically made illegal. Now, you can say that's not a good thing, and if you're a libertarian, and I am in some regards, I understand how this can be dangerous. But we have reached the point where the political divisiveness has become so pervasive and so all-consuming that whoever the winner is, they are going to realize that they have to basically ban the other guy, because that divisiveness was so complete and so deeply scarring to the country that, just like at the end of World War II, when we said we can never allow this to happen again, this referring to industrial scale genocide, we will say this can never be allowed to happen again. And so we will change the Constitution We will change the laws. We will, capture the institutions, all of that. And I do believe that will be done. That's probably a project for the back half of the 2030s.
Well, let me bring this for a close. So you heard what I said at the beginning. It doesn't matter who assassinated Charlie Kirk. It's about the division, and the sides are lining up, and there will be some civil strife, and there is going to be a lot of fallout, and the implications are long term, not of his death. It was kind of that, I don't know, tipping point. It's an event on a path we were already on.
An acceleration.
So, yeah, acceleration, sure. So, I hope we've given you things to think about and watch for. A lot of what we said tonight is speculation, but now you know. Hopefully, it triggered some thoughts in you, and now you can think about it a little bit differently.
Okay, I got some closing thoughts too. Ultimately, could something catastrophic happen? Sure, there are events that happen throughout the history of the world that are uncontrollable.
Yes.
God's in control of it all. I'm a
Yes.
pastor. I'll address some of Mr. Dugan's comments there. Yeah, I don't know 100% what God's providence has going on right now, but what you can see right now is people are starting to consider the truth of the Bible, the truth of Christianity. That's a good thing. Is it all genuine, or is it going to be a sporadic thing? Could I tell you for certain? No, that's between the people and God. I believe only God can change hearts. I believe it's an act of God to regenerate somebody and bring them to faith. But this is part of how Christ is actually. I'm a Christian, so I say Christ is ruling over the nations now. Could this be his mercy? Perhaps. Could it be a mix of judgment and mercy? Perhaps. Could it all go afoul and astray and be a major judgment of God? It could. I don't know for certain. And Plutarch here is talking about historical trends you could see and general consequences you can see throughout history and economics and political powers.
You still there, Nick?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. You just kind of stopped. So, want to make sure
Okay.
that you were, maybe you cut out there for a second. I mean, and yes, I do want to, and I dropped a comment in there as well. I can't know how all this is going to go. I am doing the best I can with the limited data I have, and a study of history that was not trammeled by the government intrusion. I was homeschooled, and history was one of my favorite topics, and so I tended to soak it up and read at a much higher grade level. So, but it also meant that I got to read history that wasn't government approved. I do honestly think that we avoid the worst of the possible outcomes, in part because okay, I will give you guys a specific thing that I think demonstrates this. Pam Bondi comes out and says, well, we have to go after, hate speech. And the right goes, hold up a minute. We just spent the past 10 years fighting against that entire concept. No, you don't. And she had to walk that back. The right, I believe, understands the need for restraint and the need in certain areas to go alongside the need for maximum violence in other cases. But I also think the right having been through what they've been through already understands that there are certain lines that you just do not cross. That doesn't mean that all of them will, that doesn't mean there won't be localized crossings, and the right will have to deal with those as they come up. Kurt Schlichter's book actually touches on that exact topic quite a bit. But I'm just going on the basis of the historical trends and whatnot. I am not trying to make an overtly Christian religious statement about what I think God is doing or not doing. I see you laughing over there, Steve. What do you got?
Yeah, that's too far down the road.
Yeah.
Above our pay grade. We're just setting a general trend, not predicting specifics.
And you guys will notice that I have tried to stay away from specifics. Yes, I have used examples, but understand that those examples are representative and not intended to be specific points. So we have actually made it through all of my notes. I did warn the guys that this was going to be a long one, and we have been at it for 3 hours. I don't have anything else to say. Steve, Nick, are you good?
No, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Well, if you guys enjoyed this, drop us a subscribe and maybe a like if you feel so inclined. If you disagree with something that we said in here, and I am sure on the basis of Andrew, there will be people who disagree with us. Now he got his questions worked out during the live stream. So maybe he won't be in our comment section, but if there were things that we said tonight that you disagree with or you want more information on, I will be able to respond to you or point you to one of the three of us who's most equipped to respond in the comment section. Do ask questions. I do like getting them. I know there's questions on last week's video. Nick, you might want to go look at those when you get a chance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Been a busy week for me.
Yeah.
I had a project deadline this week, so.
Okay. Well, maybe this weekend, Nick will get back to you guys. This was a, I won't say this was a fun one, because it was a pretty dark one, but I enjoyed the process of putting this together, and I hope you guys got something out of this. Yeah, that's all I have to say. And we will see you guys on Saturday. My wife is interviewing Dr. Danny Sulanowski. I do not remember what the topic is on. Steve, do you remember?
Well, she's known for her theory of manipulative reproductive subversion by women. Basically, team women taking down other women to cause them not to have kids, or the demise of their marriage, or strife in their life, so the woman doing the manipulating, her children will do better in competition in the future.
So that is Saturday. I have committed to being there, so I will join you guys for that one. And she already has another idea for next week that she's percolating on, and that I will have to join you guys for. So I do not remember what that one is. Sorry, guys. I have a kind of a Nick problem. I had a major deployment last night that I had to deal with. So,
okay.
And then next week we have no idea what we're doing. I am sure we will come up with something, because we usually do. And yeah,
There's so many things we could talk about.
Oh my goodness, there really are. Like, we every time we start to slow down and we start to reach into our bin of topics, something blows up, and then and then we have to oh man, now we've got more to talk about, So
Yeah.
I just also, thank you to our audience for sitting through this one. This is 3 hours. That is longer than we normally do. Go back and watch it on replay if you missed something. So I know we have a bunch of East Coasters for whom it's now midnight. My apologies, guys. Thanks for hanging with us if you did. And yeah, we will see you next Wednesday or next Saturday if you join us for the interview. Bye.
Later.
There was a firefight! Son of a bitch!